Greetings fellow YouTube viewers, it's time for another compendium video. Today's game is beautiful. So this is the end game picture, but you'll see the whole game. I was playing against this guy called Munkbat Nyamsan, and I really messed it up in the beginning, but I came back like a boss. Alright, so standard opening, king's pawn, e4, I was black. I played e5. Book moves. He decides to play this one, capturing some space. That pawn is protected by his knight, and this makes it really uncomfortable for me because I can't develop my bishop, my black bishop. So then I pin his knight. I play this, which is dumb. I shouldn't play this because it puts me at a disadvantage, as in I'm down a piece. So even though his knight is pinned, he's pinned to the queen, not to the king. This would have been an acceptable move if he was pinned to the king, but now it just ends up losing me a piece. And this early, I can make it back, which is what I do. But late in the game, this would be catastrophic. My idea was just to put some pressure on him and deny him space, just like he was denying me space. So he captures, which is the best course. I capture his queen, and look, now he's a piece up. I play this, threatening his structure. I really don't like that pawn that's over here. At this point, I could have gained back that piece, essentially, by playing g5. But I didn't, which was dumb. g5 would have been, of course, a way to gain back that piece. Now I can't. Alright. Targeting his bishop. I grab an open file, and then, being the genius that I am, I decide to give up that open file. But it's fine because I was threatening both of his pieces. If I'd done that earlier with the pawn, though, I would have actually won the piece, but whatever. This is a brilliant move. That's my version of the Scottish accent. So he's preparing to push E. I deny him the opportunity to do that. And now my pawn's forming a nice wall over here, controlling H4, G4, and F4, and also E4. Basically, most of the 4 lane is mine. He manages to capture that. I threaten this. He blunders here because, hold on. So here, what could he have done? He couldn't have gone back. He basically lost this bishop over here, I think. I don't see a way for him to have gained it back. No, there was. If he had pushed E to E6, then he would be threatening my rook, and that would actually be massively good for him. So he would threaten my rook, forcing my rook to move. If he pushed his pawn to E6, then I would have to move my rook, which is on F7, somewhere else, and then he could capture my bishop with a check, because then my rook wouldn't be guarding, and B, he would have an attack on C7, and he would also, after he'd taken my bishop and given me a check, have the ability to go to either E5 or D6. So that would have been definitely the best move. But he decides to go for this variant, which is very fortunate for me. It doubles up his pawns. So yeah, this was not so much my brilliance as much as his bad play. But yeah, I just gobble up his pawns now. He blunders again over here. Let's see, how can I take advantage of this blunder? This is retroactive, so I can't do anything about it. But like, if I could have done it, how could I have done it? Let's see. Yes. Okay. So that's I don't see the brilliant advantage. Maybe he had a much better move over here. Let's see. He could have targeted my thing, but instead he chose, by moving here, he let me grab his pawn without getting any compensation. And in the end game, pawns are extremely important. He managed to double up his rooks, but then he undoubled them just now. And now, as you can see, my king is protecting the g5 pawn, so I don't need my rook there. And I capture some more material, playing these excellent moves. Now here I do blunder a little bit. Not blunder, but I do make a little bit of a mistake. I decide to push c. No, I first give him a check. Then I decide to push c. Why is this a mistake? Because now, even though I'm protecting the a7 pawn, the a pawn, first of all, it's not very developed. It's not very useful. I mean, you could say the same thing about the c pawn, but now c pawn is going to die, get captured, as the professionals say it. But then it also breaks apart this nice pawn island which I had, the c and the d pawn. I could have had a nice pawn island over there. It breaks that apart. Yes, my a pawn does get protected, and yes, he would be getting a pawn either way, but I feel like that was not the best move I could have made. I should have just let that a pawn die, and in that time I could have made some other move that would have given me the tempo move advantage. Now this d pawn is very nice because it's preventing that king from getting any closer in this direction, so it's guarding c4, which is very useful for me right now. So I need to guard this pawn. What would have been better? I really like this d pawn, so I know that the AI is suggesting that I move there, but I prefer this move, even though it says it's an inaccuracy. Now I'm preparing to push the g pawn. It's pretty much unstoppable at this point. I've managed to push it all the way into their heartland, and this way, because it's so far, now I can just move it up and it's protected. So even if he gives me a check on g with his rook, I'm safe, which is what he decides to do. But now he's gonna either have to give up his rook for a pawn, which he does have to do in the end, or he's going to lose. I love how that sounded. This was a stupid move. It was a blunder. Why was it a blunder? Well, if I had grabbed the f file with my rook, challenging his rook, what would have happened? And why is this a blunder? These are the questions that we are trying to answer over here. Alright, so now he can give me a check on g8. That's bad, I guess. What else? He can give me a check on g8 with his g rook, and then he can so now then his rook will be on g8. I'll of course have to move my king from the g file, but then the deadly move is that he can then double his rooks on the g file. With the f6 rook will move to g6, and then he'll have the g8 and g6 rook all targeting my poor little advanced pawn, and I guess that's why the blunder was there. But now he makes the mistake of not doubling his rooks, instead moving it here, with the idea, I think, of pushing the b pawn. It's not as good in my opinion because I have the a pawn guarding it, so I don't really see the way he's gonna push the b pawn. I mean, I guess if he goes to a8, but that's not what he does. I double up my rooks. Alright, I play this. This was an inaccuracy. I think he could have taken full advantage of this one. So if you look here, I play this, and now if he gives me a check on g7, then I'm gonna have to move my king back into the 8th row, and then he's going to grab that A7 pawn, which is the only thing that's stopping this one from the B5 pawn from queening. So that's an inaccuracy. Now of course I'm gonna get that queen before, but still it's not ideal. Instead of grabbing that A pawn, he decides to give me this check, which I don't even know why. Right? He doesn't grab the A pawn at all. My king just being that absolute boss. He blunders here, allowing me to make the queen. He should have doubled his rooks on the G file. Didn't. So I made a queen like a boss. And as I had said before, he had to give up his rook for a pawn, which you never want to do that in general, but especially not in the end game. So I was already winning, but now I was like mega winning. I'm very humble, guys, if you haven't noticed. This absolute discover check is just a beast. He decides to push this one, which, why would you do that? Why would you trade your advanced pawn for just my basic little like weak pawn? I of course go for the trade. There's a missed win. I do see what the engine is saying. So if I decided to push this, I would have gotten the queen way before him, wouldn't I? Let's see. If I push this, and he pushes this, I push this, and I get a check on him, right? And his pawn is still left there hanging. Yeah, he's just left with a pawn on the that's one square away from queening, whereas I have and a rook, whereas I have 2 rooks and a queen. Yeah, there's just no way. Just to troll him, I could have just made it another rook. I love trolling guys, like it's just really fun. But now I decide to go for this one. I'm still up a rook, so it's not like he can do very much. Now I go for the best variant of this. So I want you guys to observe this. So he decides to capture with here, capture over here. I play this. He has to go here. I give him a check here. He has to go here. He goes here. He doesn't have to. I play this. Now he has to go here. And boom. Now I force the trade of rooks, which is very nice. So now this is a completely winning endgame. Now some men don't know how to do this endgame, so if you don't, watch. So the king is being a slippery fish. Now what you don't want to do is continuously try and give him a check with your rook. You want to have your king kind of be the wall. So this king right now, my black king, controls the e5, d5 and c5 squares. So if I give him a check with my rook on the 4th lane, the king, like a slippery fish, will be able to move to b5. So what you want to do is you want to move your rook over to here in one move. You're going to see this a whole bunch of times more. So when you move your rook to this side, now the king has 2 options. Either the king moves to d4. If the king moves to d4, then all the front squares, so e5, d5 and c5, are guarded. So then the king just has to go back if you give a check with your rook. If the king instead chooses to go to b4, which I think is what if the king chose to go to b4, I think you're going to see that happen later on. Not b4 exactly, but like this. So the king chose to move away from my king, so then my king just follows him, and the king moves here. The king can't either the king moves facing my king or he moves here, but eventually, because the board is limited, the king can't go forever. So now when my king moves here, his king has no option. He has to be facing my king, and when the kings are facing, boom, he has to advance back. And this just keeps on going on. A slow, painfully crushing checkmate. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. This video has been 15 thick minutes. If you did like that, make sure to subscribe. I'll be making more chess videos later on.